So the big question is this: how do passionate golfers like you and I develop a stock shot day in and day out? A stock shot that's as reliable as the sun coming up in the morning. That's the question, and this podcast is the answer. Welcome to Stock Shot Secrets. All right, everybody, I am so excited for our guest today. This is James Sieckmann, and James made it so essentially my short game didn't suck, because before James, man, it was so bad. So, James, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's nice to connect with you again.
Yeah, so James, and for those, I mean, I imagine every single person on this podcast knows who you are, but just in case they didn't, I mean, James, you probably worked with like maybe over 150 tour players. You were National PGA Teacher of the Year in 2018, doing a ton of stuff with TPI, and you could probably, I mean, I don't know if you would even, because you're so humble, like would even say this, but I would argue that you've basically flipped short game concepts on its head over the last 25 years by really bringing to light, I mean, some of the concepts back in the day of like, put the ball way back and like lean the handle and like drag it hard and like, kind of squash some of that belief. So, thank you for everything. So excited that you're here.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
So really, I would really just to kind of like start out, James, by just talking a little bit just about your story, right? I mean, kind of you from what I remember, you had a professional career, but kind of like where did it really take off with caddying with your brother Tom and Sevy, right, and just learning like, hey, why is it that I want to go into the world of teaching?
Yeah, well, I was not good enough to do anything else or smart enough. Maybe it's the right thing. So briefly, I mean, I played in college. I played in that day. There was no such thing as the Hogan Tour or the Nike Tour. That was like, so if you didn't get to tour school, you played in South Africa, Europe, Asia, or Australia, or wherever. So yeah. I played 4 years in South America and the Asian golf circuit against a ton of really good players. Roomed with guys like Tom Pernice and guys, a ton of good players, Jeff Maggard and Triplett and VJ and all those guys played over there. So anyway, after I was done, I decided to get married, which is, to this, knock on wood, still going after 30 years. I had to get a job. So it's like, okay, just like you, who do I know? So Dave Pels was the guy that coached my brother, and I knew him, and I said, hey, any way I could get a job or whatever. So it wasn't teaching, honestly. My first job was data entry at night. So I was still trying to play some events. And anyway.
Was that out of Texas, or was he where was he based out of?
It was in Austin, Texas. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, and then later when I started teaching for him, they transitioned to Boca. And I worked for him for about a year and a half. So that was kind of a brief introduction. And then I had an opportunity to start my own business. All right. So I quit working for Dave Pels. It's January 1, and I have an opportunity to open my own academy in Omaha, which I still, 30 years again, knock on wood. So I had like a 4-month break. So it's like, what am I going to teach? It's like the first time I ever had that thought in my brain, because when I worked for Dave, I just taught what Dave wanted me to teach, right? Which I didn't necessarily agree with most of the stuff anyway, but I was doing my job. So I went to pay for my brother to make a little extra money at the Players Championship. And I had the idea of, well, since I don't really know what I'm going to teach, even though I could do it, I was a decent player. But doing it and teaching is two completely different things.
Yes, 100%. Players and coaches are different.
Completely different. Yeah. And there's a saying, you never put a coach's head on a player's body. Well, I had to go kind of the other way around. I just got to figure out, I need to figure out a coach. So anyway, I went to the Players Championship, and my brother, who played on the European Tour for 7 years and then the PGA Tour for 11, was great friends with Sevy. They practiced together, and I had been part of that, 10 times, but not really paid attention too much. Well, this time I had my video camera, and they played 2 practice rounds together at the Players, and I videoed everything. And I videoed Raymond Floyd and Corey Pavin and Jody Mudd and, all these great players. And then for 4 months, I thought, well, I would have every short game shot you could have, all these great players. I'm just going to study what they do. And instead of teaching what you said exactly right. What's being taught? What's widely held? I'm not going to teach anything except for what the best players do. So for 4 months, I just studied these tapes and looked for commonalities. And honestly, it was not that difficult to find several. So that kind of became the basis for my short game.
What's so cool about your story is that, and it kind of gives me a little bit of shivers just even thinking about it, because what I found so interesting, what your story, it's very kind of, it's not, I mean, it's similar to mine in the fact that even like with teaching the golf swing, it was the same idea where it was like, okay, I'm just going to study everything under the sun. And it's like, what are the commonalities that all players do, right? And I remember you kind of telling me this story with the first time that I went out there to Omaha, because, I don't know if you remember, like Matt Harmon and Jonathan Moore were the guys that introduced me to you. And I remember going there, and what was interesting is that the way in which that you taught was the first time, and it was a lot like Bender in a way, but different than Stan, but like in the way that my brain works, like it was very systematic in its approach, right? And in our ecosystem, we have the way of practicing, and just to let you know this, because it really comes back to you are the godfather of it, is that we have created these practice plans, if you will, that follow this program block random compete stage, which really came from you and you teaching me how to practice. Because, and we'll go more into this later, but I mean, my short game was bad, like really, really bad. But luckily I hit like 15 greens, so like it didn't need to be great. I just needed to not suck, right? So, excuse me. So you start opening up this academy, and you start working with these different tour players, right? Like what are some of the success stories or things that you were kind of essentially, when you had that model and you were doing it, what are some of the things that you were turning on its head? Some concepts that were out there.
Well, I think exactly. So a lot of, I get this question. Okay, so how did you start working with tour players? It's like, because I'm just working at a club, just like,
sure.
And back in the day, if you go out on tour, there were not 100 coaches like there are now. There were like 3. It'd be like Ledbetter, Butch Harmon, and like somebody I didn't know, or maybe it was Jim McLean. There's literally no teachers out there. The second year I was working at the club, one of the guys I roomed with, an agent, Tom Pernice, said, "Hey, I can't wiggle it in from 3 feet. Is there any way you take a look at my putting?" And he was driving from Wichita, and he's on the Hogan Tour, I think they called it then. Wichita driving up to Sioux City. So Omaha's just on the path. So it's a stroke of luck. So I said, yeah, stop at the club. I'll help you. So I really helped him. He putted beautifully in the next tournament. And he called me randomly and he said, hey, is there any way you'll go to Boise with me in 2 weeks, and be my short game coach? I'm thinking, Boise, okay, listen, I got to buy a plane ticket. I got to miss 3 days of work.
Right.
And whatever I'm going to charge you is not going to be enough, especially when you factor in whatever lost revenue I'm going to have. So I thought about it and I thought, well, I'll go, but you got to find me 2 other students. I'll charge you whatever it was. I'll charge you $500.
Yep.
Because back in the day, you couldn't charge a guy like that $1,500. That's like finishing 10th place or something. It's like,
sure.
So I said, you find me 2 other students. So he found me Charlie Wee, who has been a star for 25 years, still coaching, and that was 28 years ago. So, and Larry Silvera, who's now a rep on Titleist rep on the tour. So I go to Boise, I work with these 3 guys, and then sure enough, they played well, and they're like, well, did you come out again next month? So it just kind of started organically like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long. Those guys both that year graduated from the Hogan Tour, I think it's called, to the PGA Tour. So in 1 year, I have 2, teaching nobody to having 2 clients on the PGA Tour. And from then, it's blossomed. You're right. I've coached over 140 tour players.
Yeah. And what is it kind of like? What are some of those in that finesse system? I mean, I think, and I won't break into it because I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. But what was so amazing, what you taught me, and I mean, is that everything was built in what I call like a framework, right? Like it was like, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And like your ball positions, it's these 3 things. And if you have a back ball position, it's here. And it's like, and the beauty of your system, what you're about to tell us, is like, it doesn't take rocket science to learn it.
No,
Like,
it's not. It takes discipline.
it's so
it's very
discipline,
simple, right?
but it's super simple.
So I feel like I have a few concepts in my head from basically being a player. And the number one rule would be confusion has a cost. If you're not sure, if there's not certainty or commitment to something, anytime you hit a bad shot, you're like, maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that, away from being
100%.
on the hamster wheel of things that never work. And you're just always trying random stuff. And anybody that's played golf seriously for a decade has been on the hamster wheel. It's just a universal thing. So I know as a coach that I'm not going to have success if any of my players are on it. So we're going to define every foundational piece, from setup, ball position, to how the face path relationship, the sequence, how energy flows to the pin, or whatever the case may be. And then you're going to wake up every single day trying to just get 1% better at the same thing. Now, that sounds like cookie cutter, but that's not, because there's room for style. I'm not going to teach you like I taught Charlie, or Tom Pernice doesn't look anything like Charlie Wee, but underneath they're doing the same things. Just like Seve and Raymond Floyd didn't look anything like each other, but underneath there were these commonalities. So there's room for style, and there's room for creativity and shot making. You can hit any type of shot you want, as long as like the foundational pieces are correct. So what I've always done would be like define the foundations. Okay, now let's be organized and set up what's called block training. If you read Motor Learning and Control from the learning guys, a simple way to check all 5 foundational things, if there's 5 things on your list. And the goal is to be done as quickly as you can. It's not like I'm trying to relearn. You have to learn it once. And as you know, as a coach, if that takes 3 hours to learn, well, we're going to hang in there for 3 hours. If it takes 7 hours to learn, we're going to learn it. And but once you've learned it once, you don't have to relearn it again. You have to just find it and confirm it. And literally, for a good player, that might take 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's like, okay, so provide structure on how to get 1% better, do your checks at the simple foundational things. And then once you've done your block training, it's your warm-up, just call it your warm-up, it's easy to understand. Then we got to develop skill, and there are physical and mental skills to being great. And they're shot making skills. There's like, is it one bounce to get on the green and slow it down like at Augusta next week? It's going to be like, how many bounces to the fringe to slow this ball down to get it to curve? That's a skill. That has nothing to do with technique.
Right.
Hitting your window, picking your landing spot, judging a lie. Those are skills that need to develop, just like the mental skills of focus and commitment and being in the moment and those type of things. So in a practice structure, you create a way for the player to you provide clarity first, you find an easy way for them to confirm the foundation second, and 3, you create games or practice modalities so that they can develop the mental and physical skills associated with high performance. It's really 100%. Quite simple. It sounds harder than it is. It's not
so and for me, right, like the story of my origin story in regards to you, right, was the fact that, like, I literally would have into the grain Bermuda chips. I mean, Leslie, my wife was caddying, and we're doing like these Tales of the Tour where we're talking about stories of when I was traveling and stuff. And I mean, I literally would just like flub-a-dub these chips all of the time, right? So it's understanding what it is. But fast forwarding to what you were saying, I had to basically, with my chipping through you, rebuild the whole thing. So I did what you were saying exactly. Like, I would go into TPC, and every day I would go into TPC as you had instructed on the back of the piece of paper that you had given to me, and you'd written it. And you go, first thing you need to do is take 3 minutes in a mirror and do 3 face-ons, then 3 down the lines and check it. Then after you do that, go out to the chipping range. I need you to make 10 perfect contact chips in a row. Then after you do that, you need to hit 3 sets of low, medium, high. So low, medium, high, low, medium, high, low, medium, high. And then I did it. That would be what you were calling in the block. Now that confirms what it is. And then now go do, like, hit some random shots and try to gauge lies, and then do something to earn yourself off of the course, which is the program, block, random, compete. And I did that same thing. And then finally, and this was like my breakthrough moment. I know, I'm telling you these stories because you and I haven't been able to catch up for a couple years. So I just want you to also hear from like the horse's mouth. Is that like one of the last tournaments I ever had was the PGA Tour qualifier that I was in Puerto Rico. And I was through. It was windy, blowing like 35 miles an hour. I was 5 under par going into 16. It was this par 5. I hit a drive, hit my thing up to the right. I'm just short-sighted on an uphill Bermuda lie. And I mean, if you said, Kyle, would you rather hit this chip or get punched in the stomach? I would have probably said get punched in the stomach. But a week before that, right? And there's part of this because you talked about the mental side. The week before that, I had sent you video. I'm like, how's it look? You go, man, like, it looks great. Like, you should chip good. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there, and it took me a long time to hit this chip. I'll never forget it. And I heard your voice, like, in my mind. I'm like, Kyle, like, your stuff is good, man. Like, you just have to trust your training. And I hit a chip, got up and down, blah, 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 blah. Like, ended up, you know, the tournament ended up going great and yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, the situation works, and it's to the point. It's like you just keep doing the same thing, like program, block, then compete. Program, block, compete. And really the only thing that's changing is like the games you're doing, which you do an amazing job inside your book of kind of articulating all these different types of games to like earn it off, which makes practice like more engaging, right?
It does. And then you can also design games based on what people are lacking in, and it could be the confidence. It could be like, okay, we're going to go, you got these 10 chips in a row and you got to make 2 of them to win your way off the green. Well, every day then they're making 2 chips. It might be a little simple chip that, you know, they're making 2 chips every day and to win, and they're making it to win. So that can change something. Or for a young person, a lot of times a young person might just fall in love with their lob wedge. It's like, I'm only going to chip with my lob wedge. I'm like, that's not, I'll put them into that grain on that upslope and make them use their lob wedge, because they're going to be, you know, struggling. Right. So I might say, okay, we're going to take 4 different clubs. You pick which ones they are, and we're going to stay in this spot until you hit a shot to within 4 feet. As soon as you hit a shot within 4 feet, you can change clubs, and we're going to get all the way through all 4 clubs. And your score is the total number of balls it takes you to hit each club inside 4 feet, right? So your score might be a 9. I did it in 9 balls. Well, at the end of that exercise, you simply ask that 14-year-old, let's say, that loves their lob wedge, well, which club of those 4 was the easiest? And they could go, well, shockingly, it was pitching wedge, you know, or whatever. Or it was, you know, or it was a sand wedge, one bump into the hill, or whatever. And so it becomes their idea to maybe use a different club simply because the practice is mandating it. It's dictating, you know, it's just like lifting the veil, so to speak, so they can kind of see what's going on. And so game playing is huge. I do it, you know, with the tour players I coach now. I do it every single time, and it's cultural. It's like if you play for Duke, you don't grab your shorts. You know, if you're a Duke basketball player, if you grab your shorts, you're coming out, and we don't do it at Duke. You know, that's a cultural thing. Yeah. My students are with me, hopefully, and I'm pretty confident they're doing it, because to get me, they have to be kind of have that desire to have that discipline. They win their way off the green every time. I was with Cameron Chingali and Honor Bonahiri in Miami this week. Okay, give me a 3 in a row game that I can win my way off the putting green. That was Cameron. You know, it's like, okay, what game are we going to play today? They all know it's how we walk off.
There's a trait about that. I was teaching. I worked with Michael Thompson for a while, for 3-4 years, and it was great. What one of the moments that I remember being with him is we were at where were we? I think we were at the Players, actually, and we were there, and I had to take a phone call at like 4:00. And it was earlier in the week, so like it was kind of a shortened day. And we were going there, and we were chipping to start with like short game. And I gave him a game, and like we started at like 2:30, and like now we're getting to the game, or 2:45, and now it's getting to like 3:15, 3:30. And I was like, hey Mike, like, you know, I need to go in like a half hour. Like if you need me to look at your golf swing, like, you know, we need to go hit balls. And he looked at me straight faced, and he's like, Kyle, like if I don't complete this game, like I might as well just go home. Like, the fact of him not finishing and completing the game was like, it's not even the same realm of thinking, which is why he's on the PGA Tour. I'm teaching golf, right?
No, I'm just saying, there's got to be a discipline there.
Right. Now, in regards to just taking tour players aside, right? in regards to just the recreational guys that you're seeing at, is it Shadow Creek?
Shadow
Ridge,
yeah.
In Omaha, like the normal amateur guy that's flying out to see you and hanging out. What are some of the common themes that you see? Like, hey, this is like Groundhog Day. Like this guy does this, and then they do this, and it's
from a technique perspective, it's so amazingly clear. If you just do one thing in your brain as a player to keep things straight, like, okay, you got around the green and you got bunker on this side, and you got full swing and distance wedges on this other side.
Mm-hmm.
They're cousins, okay? And they're different. This is one family, and this one's completely different. And you can think of it as a face to path relationship. It's like, okay, which really determines every other thing from setup to sequence to whatever. In the bunker or around the greens, you want the face open to the path in the delivery. In a distance wedge swing, so that you can flight it and have a penetrating flight and spin it and compress a 5-iron, you want the face closed to the path in the delivery. If the face is closed to the path, you got to shift and rotate. You got to generate speed, right? And if you're controlling speed in the bunker around the greens, the sequence has to be different. You can't start with a lateral horizontal shift and a rotary and push through your feet to generate, speed. So everything is completely different. And if I had a buck for every guy that came to my couldn't get it on the green from 10 yards and had the face closed and inside in the backswing,
that was me.
I'd be retired. Yeah, and it's because what you did in your distance wedge swing.
Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. Yeah, and you said the same thing to me, and you go, Kyle, the distance wedge swing is different than short game. And I go, oh, and it was the first time I was like, no wonder I suck, right? Yeah. Like, and it was, because we were doing a bunch of stuff with V1, and they brought out all the old lessons we did. So I just saw them like a couple weeks ago. And I mean, I for whatever reason, like, I think, God had me on a path to be a coach. I played, but like, he had different intentions for me. So everything that like Bender had said and Utley had said and you had said and Pia Nealon said, everything you had said like stuck in my brain like glue, which is why I can remember, all these things. I was like, well, James, like, how do I decipher? And you go, well, like, I think you said like, it was like Charlie Hoffman, like he takes off his glove. And that just reminds him. Or some guys, when they shuffle their feet in the sand, like that just triggers their brain. You got to do something, Kyle, but they're vastly different. So like, they know.
I love the glove thing. It's so simple. I got my glove on. I'm going to shift, rotate, compress the ball. I'm going to have the face turned down. Okay, I want spin. I want height. I want forgiveness. I want, use the back of the club. I'm going to keep my legs underneath me, or however you want to think of it. I'm going to take my glove off. It's like, it's like as close to putting in full swing is like, they're just so different, It's okay.
Now, what about in regards to what's been probably very cool for you is being a part of the Titleist Institute, right? Because of the fact that you've got, there's really, and I was kind of saying this to some players at the PGA show when I was kind of talking down there, but what's interesting with golf nowadays compared to like when you came on the scene, even like when I started to come on, is the technology is so good, right? That the camps of like what you can say that are out of bounds, it's like you can't say that because the science just doesn't validate what you're saying, right? So like the chasm between like camps of teaching, like it's getting actually narrower because it's like you can't say something foolish, right?
100%. Yeah, you'll be exposed.
Right.
So what are some, like when I first started, like I was so like everybody was like, "Oh, and you're teaching what? No way!" And I'm like, "I'm just telling you, that's what they do. Just watch Raymond Floyd. This is what he does." You know what I'm saying? And they're just like, "No, but now you can't do that anymore because now it's measured, right? They can just
go like, look at all the data, like it's right here."
Yeah. Now you still get some weird people saying some weird stuff, but everybody else looks at each other and goes, "No, that's not it." So you can't get by. But I'll say this: the cool thing about TPI. And the reason why I love being down there, and everybody thinks it's Greg and Dave, and it is. Those guys are brilliant, and the research they do, but the real amazing trick about that place is that they have a advisory board where they have the smartest people in every possible category that you could possibly have, right? So you got like Jan Alexander's like periodization, which is like the art of peaking at the right moment. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's a thing. It's like you can't peak on Thursday if you got to win on Sunday. You know, you got to there's certain foods or workouts or whatever. There's uh Timothy Schmidt, like motor learning and control. These guys are like the most expert on like how you learn and how you and so they take like the top 10% of what the smartest guy in that field knows and they kind of just fold it into their program. So
Yeah.
they might have a guy like Roger Fredericks, who's like the foremost expert in like stretching. Like, how would you, as an older person, like, uh, I'm saying that in a nice way, by the way, I'm not as old as me, but uh, the more important thing is not strength, it's mobility. All right,
Right.
at our age. So, like, what are the keys to mobility? How well they talk to Roger Fredericks always talks about how you got to breathe when you stretch, and if you're not breathing while you stretch, you're not doing it right. And so they'll take
Right.
these things and they fold it into the program from every expert in every possible field that might even nutrition and everything. And there's a lot of topics. And so you're
Yeah.
always going there, you're getting the best stuff from the smartest people, even if you're not getting them from that exact person because they've taken their stuff basically. And they'll tell you, like, we're going to take your best stuff and it's going to become part of the TPI brand. And I
Right.
was like, I'm good with that. That's okay. As long as I
Yeah.
can learn everybody else's best stuff too.
Yeah, and they're
Right.
just doing what we did, what you did, and like what you did in short game, and kind of like what I kind of did with swing and the stuff. That they're going. This is what everyone does. So like
This is what the best players do.
the world should know.
Yeah.
Now,
And
what about
they don't go, it's the only way. They just go, well, listen, you want to know what the best players in the world do? They do this. It's like, and then they just leave it at that. Right.
yeah? Now, what about you? Kind of touched a little bit on it, like because it's kind of changed since you first started coaching to now. Like, what about just the fitness side? Like, how have you seen? What do you see as the fitness portion and the fitness role in the golf swing? Right, it doesn't even obviously have to be short game, but like,
Right.
how much a part of that in your coaching curriculum is that
Yeah.
being a
Well,
part of TPI and learning all that stuff?
that's become huge. And back in the day, it was nothing. You didn't even, 1995, didn't ever talk about fitness. It's like, hey, maybe you don't have the Snicker bar at the turn, or that was about it. You know what I'm saying? But it was now it's about, stability in the certain joints, mobility in others. It's about functional strength, and it's about being efficient in training. You see these kids now with unbelievable ball speeds, right? You said
Crazy.
over 200. And it's like, well, the ball's going too far. No, their club head speed's 130,
Right.
or whatever. It's because they're training and they're smart and they know how to, the forces and the torques are being super efficient because they're getting amazing coaching that's factual. And you and I, at least when I'm of the age when I played, I didn't have any coaching. I mean, it was all
No,
just like
yeah, I never,
seat
ever,
of the pants.
ever,
And
ever
because of
worked on
that,
speed.
we're inefficient. We didn't have the right, ball. We didn't have the right set makeup. Now everything they got everything just dialed in, and it's unbelievable. And I would say the fitness component, and there's definitely a body swing connection. You can't swing the way you want to swing if your body's not going to allow you to do it, right? So not just speed, but just efficiency and the functionality.
Absolutely.
If the body doesn't move right, you got no chance.
Absolutely. So what about so like when I was out there and working with you, which would have been in probably 2000, I want to say we started in probably 2014 or so, 15.
That sounds
We
right.
obviously about back then it was really, which I personally, for me, it's the main judge, in my opinion. We use video, right? Like video, in my opinion, like trumps all. But what about technology? Are you using like any technology nowadays to teach short game, and how is that having a role on your lesson tee?
Right. I have it. I don't use it.
Yeah.
I'll use my
Understood. You
quad
trust your eyes.
I've just been doing it a certain way for so long. Now, here's the thing. The nice thing about having it is if you don't back in the day, it'd be like, oh, how's it feel? Like, does the ball like it? And
Okay.
then that's how you judge.
Yeah.
Because a good player will know. But sometimes some players don't know. It's like, I don't know if it feels right. I don't know if the ball likes it.
Right.
I don't know, but you can measure it. You can say, so I had a girl in, for example, this last week from San Diego. She came came to Phoenix and we spent some time. She's launching the ball at like 30. We're hitting an 85-yard shot. She's launching the ball at like 34 degrees
Yeah.
and she's spinning it like 5,200. And I showed her how by getting her head on top of the ball in her setup and staying there when she pivoted and then shifting and rotating, the launch came down under 30, came down to like 28 and a half, and the spin rate went up to 9,200.
Right.
Now, she might not see that low flight because she's never seen it in her life. I mean, she's it's a new thing, right?
Right.
And well, I don't like that. I like the high better. I'm like, you could argue, well, hey, listen, the environment's going to toss this other ball around, but look what just happened to the spin rate. It went from 5,200 to 9,300. And so at least technology to some degree can kind of validate what you know as a coach.
Yep.
And it can do it right away, which I like. But one reason why I don't use like the force plates and stuff like that I have is that I feel like it slows the lesson down. It slows the learning down. People like, what was that? What was my, and they're trying to understand. I don't want to teach you how to read graphs, kinematic sequence graphs. I don't want to teach you how to look at the force plates and, that stuff for me is like, that's more for like the coach.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't feel like I need it. Teaching 30 years in the short game, especially I do full swing stuff too, but I don't feel like I need it. And so therefore,
I think it just validates it. To your point, it validates what it is. So when for that young lady who hits a shot and she goes, I don't know if I like that. You go, well, like, look, like your spin rate just doubled. And the truth is like the science is that no good player on the PGA Tour or whatever, like hits wedges above 30 degrees. Like, so you might not like it, but like, then you're gonna suck. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's just a bias. They're people, but and so you can validate. And I simply will do. I like catching them doing it right, and then once they catch it doing right, then I like just taking a video and going, okay, this is when you're at your best. This is how we set up. This is how you load. This is the plane in the face. This is and I can use something like a quad, and we can write down, okay, what the angle of attack is and all that stuff. But it just seems to me like good golf is not about that. Great golf to me is about being simple, being clear, being skillful, being committed. And those, the technology is not helping so much with that.
Yeah.
I'm doing a good job anyway.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, since we are talking about technology, I'd be interesting to hear what you said, because I did ask you this once back, and this is probably I was playing but teaching. This is probably in 2016. What if you're teaching an amateur at your course? It's a normal 15-yard shot off of a fairway lie, like perfect lie. What would you say if someone was holding a gun to your head and they go, what do you want their attack angle to be, and what do you want their swing direction to be? What would you say?
So you have to always quantify what trajectory you want to hit, because that will affect a few things. So I always
normal
I always
shot,
say just
middle pin.
Don't try and hit it low. Don't try and hit it high. Just kind of hit your normal shot. And I always, when I measure, because I do this with pretty much every student, I do measure. Let's a 10-yard carry with your lob wedge, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Most lofted wedge. So I typically want an angle of attack of 6 or 7 degrees, okay? I want the path probably 3 to the left.
Okay.
I want the face to path probably want the face a degree to the right, so probably 4 degrees open to the path, the face. Mm-hmm. I don't really pay attention too much to launch angle, because of the groove wear. For most amateurs, they don't have old grooves and stuff like that. But and there's always tell people there's 2 types of, and I want the low point in front, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's 2 types of contact. Typically, there's the club and the ball, and there's also the club and the ground. And if the face is open to the path, the low point in front, and it's reasonably shallow, like 6 or 7 degrees, then you're just going to do that to the ground, right? And
there
are a ton of things we haven't really talked about mechanics to achieve that, but if those are the parameters on the club delivery, the angle of attack, face to path relationship with the low point in front, and then rhythm and tempo uh,
Play a massive point.
a massive role because you can't have great touch if your rhythm is poor.
What
And
do you
not
like
that,
to
a lot
do?
of times if your rhythm's poor, then the kinematics are wrong. You know,
It,
you might down cock in a transition or
is
whatever.
there anything that you like to teach in regards of how to help someone through with their rhythm and tempo? Like, is it through metronomes, through an app, through any technology, or is it
Uh,
grip pressure, or what may it be? Because I think that jerking and like
yeah.
falling and all that kind of stuff is
So
a massive
there
piece to
are
it.
a couple things you can do for someone has poor kinematic sequence. So typically, if I was like for some, I don't know if people are going to be watching this, but
Yeah,
if
there.
I was standing up, I mean, in the transition, it's like you want the club actually moving faster than the lead arm. So it's actually, so you're maintaining
Yep.
the radius. It's coming up. There's a little pause. It's unhinging, and the radius of the circle is being maintained. It's not like shortening because you're down cocking. So the people that down cock, it's lead arm moving faster than the club, right? Which
Yep.
adds angle, which is great for full swing, right? If you want to hit it far, but it's not very good from 10 yards. So there's grip pressure. I'll do a pause drill where you feel the club start. The orange whip wedge is a great tool for people that kind of jerk it down because if you do that, the ball's going to go, you can't hit it, it'll go out to the right. But
Right.
I think more than that, it's just like understanding that you're going to control the radius of your circle. It's going to go up. It's basically going to retrace, keep its width, and then you're going to allow your body, your upper body, especially, and then your lower two to turn through to support the release of the club.
Right.
And if you want the face open to the path, you better not take it inside because if you take it inside and the face is open and you deliver from the inside with an open face, the ball's not going to go straight, right? So there,
Right.
I would say neutral path, which you know you could call it on plane, but uh, I mean that's complicated
Yeah. Yeah.
topic. But on plane with the toe up in the air, releasing open, supporting with your body and rhythm would be easy ways to kind of talk about what
Yeah.
the mechanics might be.
So, two last questions here. With doing this stuff with because you had kind of mentioned to it, and we actually had a kid yesterday in our junior academy, and they, our academy kids had just gotten fit, so they got new wedges, so it made like a ridiculous difference with spin and all sorts of stuff. And unfortunately, I mean, money doesn't grow on trees, but to your point, many amateur golfers like have old wedges. I heard one stat, I think it was for every 500 bunker shots you hit, it reduces the spin off of a wedge 1,000 RPMs.
It
But
could very well be
but
true.
but if you were kind of just in regards of wedge design and short game, like or even in putters, right? Because it seems like every putter under the sun now, and it probably goes to what camp you're in, is face balanced, right? Which can be a discussion in itself. But
Right.
just in regards to any thoughts on wedge designs and grinds and
Yeah.
bounces, like being especially with Titleist and Bob Vokey and all that stuff.
Right.
Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. I've been kind of intimately involved in that whole process for years, but I would say, let me just give you two general ones. Number one, the tour players now they get their wedges for free, but the ones I coach replace their pitching wedge every year, gap wedge twice a year, sand wedge 3 times a year, lob wedge 4 times a year. That's a minimum. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Because uh, if as the grooves wear down, the launch goes up and the spin goes down, and that's not good, right? So
Right.
uh, at the amateur level, you're not playing every day. You're not hitting 50 bunker shots a day in practice. Let's just say with your club you use out of the bunker, let's replace it every year. All right, let's start with that one. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, if you have in your set makeup a most lofted wedge with not a lot of bounce on it, I can assume like reasonable mechanics because that affects
Massive. Yeah.
what wedge you should play. But let's say it's a lob wedge with relief on the back and it's not a real wide bottom or whatever, a lower bounce model, and you had a sand wedge with a wider bottom and more bounce. Then you're set up to perform in any circumstance. If it's into the grain, Kyle, in the Bermuda, you can use the sand wedge with more bounce and open the face, right?
I'm getting sweaty
If it's
just thinking about that.
if it's firm, turf, and tight, you can take the lob wedge with less bounce and put it back and take bounce off, right?
Right.
Firm comes out fast, slow bunker, slow turf that explodes when you hit it, that's sandy. You need a little bit more bounce. So if
Right.
you if you go low bounce in every wedge, there's certain conditions that are always going to be tough for you. If you go high bounce in every wedge, there are certain conditions that are going to be tough. It's really tough to play from.
Yeah.
So if you go high bounce sand wedge and lower bounce lob wedge, then you'll always have a club and a play in any environment. So if you just replace the lofted one often and have those two set parameters, then at some point you kind of will learn your wedges, and it almost does. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what you have, it does, but you'll get used to it at least, and the technique to some extent will kind of evolve around what you have in your bag.
Got it. And last final question, just for all of our roomies listening to it, like if there was, you're at like a cocktail party and some guy comes up to you, which this definitely has happened. He goes, James, like you're the short game guru. Like, could you have like one thing? Like what's one thing I could do? Which is not even a real thing. But if there was something that you could go, hey, just start here.
Yeah, I would be like, go to the bar and get me a beer. I always would say, listen, the low-hanging fruit is how you train. If you're an amateur player, you're typically training so poorly compared to, like, how are you going to learn and grow when nothing's defined and you just hit the same shot over and over again from the same aisle? And yeah, they're right by the hole, but you've done nothing. You might as well just beat a movie. So I was like, if you're going to do something, anything, this could be organized in how you train. Annika used to say every minute has a purpose in her training, right? And this minute I'm going to accomplish this. The next minute I'm going to try and accomplish that. If you just did that one thing, you could practice so much less. I mean, you could spend a third of the time out there and accomplish more. So that would probably be.
I always say, I go, listen, you have no time to practice, which is why you have no time to waste time in your practice. Your wife gives you 1 hour a week. You better make sure that counts.
Yeah,
right.
And let's not do the same thing for an hour. Let's do 5 minutes of one thing and knock it out, and let's do the next thing.
Absolutely. Well, James, how can people, I guess first before signing you off, how can people like just learn more about you? Is there anything that any books or websites or where can we send more people to learn more about James?
Two things that you could do if you want my stuff. It's not always that easy to get into theming, but I've written 3 books. Your short game solution, your putting solution, and another one called Cool Under Pressure, about performing under stress. So those would be places to start. And then if you want like remote learning from me, I have a short game mastery program. It's online where I go A to Z, like this is how the keys to hitting a bunker shot. These are the keys, and they're all videos, right? 2-minute videos, very digestible. Do this first, do this second, do this third, just like we did. And then I have like a weekly Facebook Live where people can zoom in and ask questions or submit videos, and we'll review them. So
I might have to join this.
Shortgamemastery.com. You should, why not? I have actually quite a few coaches on there.
I might.
They have like, hey, I'm struggling with this player that has this particular issue. What would you suggest? So I have probably 4 or 5 of the Short Game Mastery members that are PGA pros.
Well, James, from the bottom of my heart, I don't think you understand the amount of impact that you had on my life in regards to one as a coach, or I'm sorry, first as like a player, and taking what used to be the worst part of my game and something that created so much stress and making it something that was adequate, that I could compete and play and win and perform. And then really just even as a player, teaching me so much stuff and kind of sharing your secrets of, to your point, of like how to perform and how to practice and all this stuff that now has been, continuing to spread the word of coming from you and spreading that word so we can make players better. So, I mean, you had a dramatic impact on my life, and I appreciate it very, very much for just your willingness to be me up my coach and share it with me. And I appreciate you being here and being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. It's always a joy to work with people that are like-minded. So, guys like Jonathan Moore and you, even though we're all kind of done playing at this point, it's like, it's almost better to be with you all than it is some unhappy millionaire out there playing on the tour. Right?
Yep. I hear you. All right. We'll see you, buddy. Thank you so much.
You. All right. Good. Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. Now, as a listener of Stock Shot Secrets, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get better. So if you were to go to stockshotclub.com, I'm going to give you 7 days free access where you can send us your video and we will give you personalized individual attention as to what you need to do so that you can start building stock shots. So just go to stockshotclub.com and register there. We'll give you 7 days free where you can try it. And then if we like it, you can stay inside the Stock Shot Club where we can become your coach and walk with you for your entire journey. Thank you so much. And be sure to go visit stockshotclub.com.